Hello, and welcome to I Can't Believe It's Not News. My name is Beth.
And I'm Elizabeth.
And we are your co-hosts.
And we're here to talk about fake news.
Why? Why are we doing this?
Because it's a thing. It's a big thing, unfortunately.
Kind of, yeah.
Impact on us, on, recent political events and just our lives in generally impacted.
I think we're tired of being pissed off all the time.
This is true. We are pissed off. Mad as hell. Not going to take it anymore. So we're podcasting.
We're doing something.
Yeah.
So who are we? I'm Beth.
I'm Elizabeth again. Still.
Yeah. No, let's see here. So I went to school for sociology and criminology. And as a sociology major, we definitely focused on the effects of culture. And so when I see all this fake news affecting our culture, I just got really interested in it.
Well, I'm Elizabeth, and I studied psychology and sociology when I was in school. And it's really interesting, just how much of an impact fake news has had. And you see it in our Facebook feeds all the time. And it's really frustrating when you get into conversations with people and you can't even agree on facts.
Right. Like verifiable facts.
Yeah. And I get really frustrated when you're having these conversations, and I just feel like just saying, just because it's not true, because it came from a disreputable website, you can dismiss it out of hand. That's not good enough for some people. Right. And a lot of people say, well, the corporate media, the New York Times, NBC, these places are the real fake news because they're the ones who are giving you the stories that the corporations want you to hear. And it's hard to dispute that, because you're not really working with the same set of facts.
And we're not journalists. We're not scientists. We have kind of regular jobs, but we wanted to show people that anybody can become a fake news checker, just like we have.
Yes.
We have developed this system to say, hey, here's how you can look at an article, and here's how you can decide whether or not it's fake and whether or not to share it, and how to logically talk to people who maybe have shared a fake article or are saying, well, the, New York Times and Washington Post are fake news.
Yeah. So do you want to just talk about it? You want to talk about what we believe fake news is?
Well, you know what? I thought I'd start first with talking a little bit about some history because, we love history, right?
Yeah. What do you have, Beth?
Well, I think, back in the day, where did people get their news from, right? The news is actually where they got their news from. So according to Wikipedia, the first newspaper started back in 1605. And then the next day, the first gossip paper started.
That sounds about right.
That was a joke.
See, I can.
But, yeah. This is how fake news starts. But there is some interesting history here. The term magazine was coined in 1731 in England when the Gentleman's Magazine was created. The British also gave us the Daily Mail, which is still running today.
Oh, they sure did.
And that started back in 1896. Now, as of today, the Daily Mail is so fake that it's currently... what is it today? They settled the lawsuit with Melania Trump.
Yeah.
So she was suing them for running a story about her being an escort in the 1990s. And ironically, the Daily Mail is actually considered to be a very conservative leaning publication in that they seem to hate actual science. They support the Conservative Party, and they attack groups like gay people or people who smoke marijuana. And I feel like maybe they just didn't get the memo on POTUS and his wife because they're on their team.
Well, I'll tell you, the thing that pisses me off most about the Daily Mail is the uncomfortable position that they have put me in of agreeing with and supporting Melania Trump.
I know, right? That's the worst part.
I know, it's awful. I saw that. I was just like, go get them. Take them for all they're worth. But it looks like she's just accepted, a very small, conciliatory settlement and, and an apology. And good for her.
This might be a really good time to mention that we're liberal.
Yes.
Just because I think we forgot that in our introduction. We're both very liberal leaning on the left. And although we're not looking to only look at fake news on the conservative side, because it does come from both sides.
It does. And it's a problem for both sides, because whether you're liberal or conservative or independent or what have you, you want to be working with the truth. Everyone wants to be... Well, I don't know everyone, but I think that most people want to believe true things. And
absolutely.
Yeah, when we're given bad information, but it looks like it's true, then no one wins.
Yeah. And, liberal fake news actually makes me more angry than conservative fake news.
Right there with you.
Yeah, because we don't really need help being dumb. And we definitely don't need help not knowing what we're talking about.
Liberals don't need help being dumb?
Nobody needs help being dumb.
Okay.
I mean, I'm just saying, like, when you read something and you spout it back at somebody and they're just looking at you like, that was the dumbest thing I've ever heard. How come you didn't realize that was fake news? And then you're like, oh. I'm just saying, nobody needs help being dumb.
Yeah. Well, what you said, it sounded like you were saying, liberals don't need any help being dumb. Just to clarify, Beth.
Yeah, just to clarify. I'm not saying that liberals are automatically dumb. Just, we also get fooled. Everybody gets fooled.
Everyone gets fooled. Everybody. Yeah. Everyone. And I think... I think that, we've had some problems. I don't know if I'm getting into it too much here, but I supported Bernie Sanders. And when he did not win the nomination, I supported Hillary Clinton like a good Democrat. And I think that there was a lot of fake news out there that caused people to not be on board with that. And people stayed home, or they voted for Jill Stein, or did something that was not conducive to a Democrat winning. And that's
in all this research I've been doing for this podcast, I've come across some of that about how they think that part of the Russian influence was basically to get Bernie Sanders voters to not want to vote for Hillary Clinton. So I think there's definitely something there that possibly was going on. Yeah. So, well, anyway, how the first fake news story, I thought this was really interesting. This is how it all started back in the day. There was the Great Moon Hoax, which referred to a series of 6 articles that was published in The Sun, a New York newspaper, beginning on August 25th of 1835, about the supposed discovery of life and even civilization on the moon. The discoveries were falsely attributed to Sir John Herschel, one of the best-known contemporary astronomers of that time. So basically, they made up this story. They made up a person even. The author was this Dr. Andrew Grant, who didn't exist. And it describes fantastic animals on the moon, including bison, goats, unicorns, bipedal Tellus beavers, and bat-like winged humanoids.
That's the Bat Baby.
Yeah, who built temples. And there were trees and oceans and beaches. And these discoveries were supposedly made with an immense telescope of an entirely new principle.
Sounds awesome.
I know, right? I think that's what everybody thought. Sounds awesome. So eventually the authors announced that the observations had been terminated by the destruction of the telescope means of sun casing the lens to act as a burning glass, which set fire to the observatory. So that's how they ended it.
And all the people in there were like little ants.
Probably. So I think there's a big difference between fake news then and fake news now, but also something similar. And, back in 1935, they didn't have the knowledge about the moon or access to a telescope to be able to see if this was correct or not. Now we have actual photos of the moon and we can just Google pictures of the surface. And, even if we want for a few $100s, we can go buy a telescope ourselves and look.
Well, you can Google these guys too.
Yeah, exactly. We have Google. So if it was published today, there would be no doubt that it was fake and it would likely be just regarded as satire. So
you have Google, use it.
Yes, exactly. But this was, I think the similarity to today is that this was meant to mislead for a gain. And in this case, it was meant to sell newspapers. Like the newspaper subscription for this newspaper went way up after these articles came out. And even when it was discovered that it was fake, the subscriptions didn't really go down. People kept reading it.
Back to Bat Boy. This reminds me of the National Enquirer.
Yes,
they
definitely.
The Weekly World News. I
haven't read that one.
Well, it's in the same vein. It's, the little newspaper things at the grocery store that are right there at the checkout. And they would have these outlandish, insane things on the cover. And I'm like, who is buying this? Who is reading this?
My grandmother. My grandma.
Really?
Yeah. Actually, I remember being at her house when I was younger and seeing, all of these National Enquirers just stacked up. And I was like 7 and I knew it was fake.
Wow.
And I felt so horrible that my grandma was believing this, and I don't know whether it was just entertainment for her or if she really believed it, but there is something to be said for when there's scientific studies out there, and I don't have one in front of me to quote, but that basically as you get older, you do tend to get a little bit more gullible. Like It is like science, right?
Yeah.
And that's why old people become prey for like scams and things, is because they're a little bit more gullible as your brain function starts to decline as you get older. And I wonder if that's what part of it was, is that she was just a little bit more gullible because she was older, or if she was just gullible anyway. I don't know.
Oh, Grandma.
But I do remember that. And it was always kind of embarrassing that my grandma read National Enquirer and believed it.
So did she talk to you about these things? Did she?
I don't think so. But it just, I just was always kind of like, oh, okay, Grandma.
Oh.
Anyway, that's my sad story.
I'm interested in Grandma. I want to know more about her. We're going to have to talk about this later.
Well, I think back to my point is that similar today, it was meant to mislead for a gain. And in that case, it was to sell newspapers. And I think today the intent is the same, but also at like a deeper level, in that there is a driving force of money connected to fake news, but there's also an agenda of confusion and maybe even power. The power to mislead in that regard and bring about fear and confusion and disinformation into society. And I mean, how powerful is that someone in their basement can influence thousands or even hundreds of thousands of people by just simply making up an article?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, hey, real quick before we move on, Elizabeth.
Yes.
Let's talk about the difference between disinformation and misinformation, because I think this is a very important point to make.
Yeah, it is. So that was something that I looked up because I was wondering exactly what the difference is. And
yes, Elizabeth is the one that makes us smarter here.
Well, disinformation is a lie. It is a fictitious claim that has been made up and is intentionally not true. Misinformation is not true, but it's mistaken. So the difference between there is intent. So if I say to you, I have an appointment at 4:00 this afternoon, and really it's at 3, I'm not lying to you. I'm just mistaken. So if I tell you, I have an appointment at 4:00 this afternoon and I know it's at 3, but for some reason I don't want you to know that, then that would be disinformation because it's the intent.
It's probably because you want me to stop stalking you about how much research you've done for the podcast. Elizabeth, do you have this done? I have an appointment at 4:00.
I'm very busy. I'm very busy at work right now, Beth, and always.
Well, I think another really good example that we had talked about was that Washington Post article that came out about the bust of Martin Luther King being
that was a really good example, right?
Misinformation.
Yeah, so that reporter made a mistake.
Right.
And he corrected himself because he's a person and not a news reporting robot. He made a mistake, and that's okay. Right. I had looked up an article on the right that was talking about fake news issues that have plagued Donald Trump since he was elected. And that was one of the ones that they cited as, doing the air quotes, fake news.
Like, oh, poor guy.
Yeah, I know, right?
I feel so bad for him.
And so I haven't really looked too closely at the rest of that list, but I want to do that and just kind of see what their perspective is, to see if there's more stuff like that on there, or if there's, what's legitimate.
Sure.
That actually is fake news that is not in his favor, but that would just be misinformation.
Yes. And granted, there is going to be fake news about Donald Trump. Yeah. Period. It's going to be out there. And you and I have agreed before we started recording that if we want to refer to the president of the United States, his name is Donald Trump, that in this podcast that we may refer to him as DJT.
Yeah.
And just in case we
familiar, but
just in case we are choking or we can't physically say his name. We might just say DJT just to shorten it and make our lives a little bit less miserable while he's president. So
Beth said to me earlier, so Donald Trump dropped those bombs, and just hearing those words together in that order just was shocking to me.
Yeah. I still get a stomach ache when I think president and then people say his name after that word. I kind of just... Yeah, I have to stop sometimes. So DJT is a good way for us to be able to say his name and refer to him without actually having to refer to him by his title.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about what a fake news is to us, because I think that's a good guideline for us to talk about before we get into rating and reviewing articles and labeling them. Yeah. So a few basic guidelines for what I would consider fake is, for me, fake has to be that literally somebody sat down at a computer, or I guess with a crayon, and with malice intent, they created a news article from their imagination.
I picture someone with the little handlebar mustache.
Yes, I think that's too nice, though. But the dictionary says that fake is a thing that is not genuine, a forgery, or a sham. And not those pillow shams like you like. Right?
Right. Those are the good kind of sham.
Yeah, we love pillow shams here at I Can't Believe It's Not. But it's the other shams that we have a problem with. So, you know how we named the president DJT for this podcast, for speaking terms. And we were talking about, what's another word for fake that we could use. And we talked about using fiction. And I was on board with it for 10 seconds. And then I was like, no, it's too nice. That's something when we go buy a fiction book, it's something that we do for entertainment and something that we enjoy. That's my dream vacation is to just sit on a beach and read. And I don't want to associate that with fake news. So I think we just have to call it fake.
Yeah, I think we'll be okay.
Yeah.
But we also wanted to include articles like one that we were talking about earlier from Occupy Democrats that are generally fake, but have kernels of truth in them.
Yeah, so there's definitely some more categories here. So the next level down for me is propaganda. And propaganda is defined as information, especially of a biased or misleading nature, used to promote or publicize a particular political cause or point of view. So I think a lot of...
Real quick, so that definition includes misleading. So it is essentially misleading.
Correct. Mm-hmm. Yes. And I think, I think a lot of either the far right or the far left blogs or, things that you see on Facebook especially, they're going to fall into at least a partial propaganda category. And one of the things that when I was researching propaganda and like how to explain it, there's a Wikipedia page for propaganda in the United States. And I was like, oh, how interesting. And I was reading through it. And one of the things that they list as propaganda that the U.S. government has done is the war on drugs. And I was like, that's very interesting because, that is something that, and that one's worked really, really well. I mean, that propaganda paid off. That got them where they wanted to go. And now we're in the back part of it where we're trying to like get away from it. And people are starting to realize that, hey, that was just propaganda. That this isn't something that needs to be treated as a criminal, thing. And
it doesn't affect
jail for it.
It doesn't reflect reality. And there are massive consequences to our society because of it.
Right. So we will say that propaganda sometimes is a little tricky because there are some times where, our government and others have used propaganda for good. It may still be biased, but it might be biased in a good way, and I definitely, one of the biggest examples is World War II. There was a lot of propaganda against the Nazis, and, we hear it. I can't believe it's not news. Are definitely have come out as anti-Nazi.
We're going to make that stand. We're brave and we're going to be courageous.
Yeah. So there's some times where propaganda isn't the worst thing in the world, but when it's being used in a bad way, we don't really like it.
Yeah, the word tends to have negative connotations.
Definitely. Nobody's like, oh my gosh, I love propaganda. Nobody's like sitting like in an advertising agency going like, you know what we should do? We should really, I think this big nationally world-known company would really appreciate it if we associated their name with propaganda.
Like Pepsi?
Yeah, I wasn't going to say There's this like worldwide soft drink. Right now is having a problem.
A little bit of a problem.
So the next category is spin. And this is a favorite of our politicians. Spin is defined as a particular bias, interpretation, point of view intended to create a favorable or sometimes unfavorable impression when presented to the public. So, Fox News. And to be fair, MSNBC.
Well,
they spin too.
It's not the same.
It's not the same to us.
No, yes. It's not the same, period. Objectively, factually, it is not the same.
No, I agree. There is, I think to a certain point, like we all spin every day. And we expect our politicians to spin. There's been a lot of talk about, can Donald Trump be presidential?
Who's that?
I'm sorry.
I don't know this man.
Why would he need to be presidential? He's the president of the United States. But there's been a lot of talk about that. And I think it's, we expect our president to walk out on a, national level and to spin and to be trustworthy and to be presidential in their demeanor and how they speak and how they act. And at the end of the day, it's spin.
Well, that's really interesting, that phrasing that you just had. You just put spinning and being trustworthy on the same level. So I think that when he gets out there and he talks in a way that is spinless and unfiltered, it is terrifying.
We get so upset.
Beth is like, I just want you to lie to me so I can trust you.
Exactly. For goodness sake. Well, I mean, if you think about it, even, if you walk into a Best Buy or a grocery store, like, you expect the employees to approach you with some sort of professionalism and not be like, sitting on the counter chewing gum in their sweatpants like they would be at home. Like, I guess that's what I'm talking about, is sometimes spin can be presentation. Mm-hmm. And we all do that. And we expect that from other people. I think that there's a line when, especially in news, where spin can get just out of control. And that's where it can cross over and start to become propaganda or start to become fake.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you. That made me laugh. All right. So the next category to talk about is one of our favorites. Actually, this is our favorite category. I'm going to put myself out there, is satire. So these are the stories created to make you laugh. Mm-hmm. And they're like news jokes. And there is no intent to deceive. And one of our favorite publications in the world, The Onion.
The Onion is one of my favorite things in the world. It's like up there with my child.
Yes.
The Onion so much.
And sometimes I think they're actually just quite on point.
Yeah. So,
yeah. So, hey, Onion, this is I Can't Believe It's Not News podcast. We just want to say that, we like you and maybe you want to like us back.
Yeah, like maybe like us back. A little shout out, maybe.
Yeah, we'd be okay with that.
Yeah.
I think actually The Onion is probably like my dream job. Like, if I could do anything in the world, writing for The Onion would be like, that's it.
I've had those thoughts too. Yeah.
Maybe they would like a column by Beth and Elizabeth. I didn't know we were going to do a job application right off the bat. But there you go. It just happened. All right. So the last, one of the other categories I want to talk about is, I think these are like the really like low down, just dirty people that create scams.
And it's not like, again, with the quotes, fake news necessarily, but it's false. And sort of we just wanted to just chat about it really quick because
wanted to mention it.
Yeah, you use some of the same critical thinking skills to evaluate things like emails you might get. You might say, oh, this looks like an interesting headline on this clickbaity thing here on the internet. Am I going to click on this or not? Or, maybe.
And that is actually the reason why I include it in the fake news category, is because you do have a lot of click links that you get. Mm-hmm. The Bill Gates is giving away $1 million to everybody who likes this link is a scam. Please don't click that.
He's not. He's not.
He's not.
Now, Mark Zuckerberg, he is. That one's for real. That's true. Yeah. You should do that one.
Okay, so don't do that one. She was just kidding. Just to be clear. So, and also so what is the benefit of those is that basically it takes you to a site where there's going to be adhere bugs or like phishing lures or malicious code downloaded onto your computer. So, that's, and those also too are where you see like the celebrity death stories, the fake ones, or like we're giving away free airline tickets. Mm-hmm. And I do think that sometimes they are masqueraded as news articles. So definitely just be aware of those. Yeah. And
be careful out there, folks.
Yeah. Yeah. So also things that you can click on. Let's talk about memes.
Oh, memes.
Memes, they're so fun. I like them and I don't like them sometimes, but they can make you laugh. They can make you cry.
They can be fake.
They can be fake. I think they can be really fake, actually.
Super duper fake.
I think one of the reasons that they're so popular is that, you know, a picture is worth 1,000 words.
Mm-hmm.
So with
you have the imagery and really simple text. So the combination of that makes it really easy to process, really quick. It gets that quick hit of, oh, this is funny. Oh, this is sad. This makes me mad. And you share it. And it's not a block of text that you have to read and process. And you don't have that visual cue as well. So memes are very effective.
Yeah. And the history of memes is one of your favorite authors, Richard Dawkins, coined the phrase in his 1976 book, The Selfish Game.
Gene.
So memes of... Oh, I was the selfish gene. I wrote that down wrong. Sorry.
Well, it's because a gene replicates, right? And so that's kind of the thought, is that a meme is actually, in his definition, it's not a little image with text on it that you spread on the internet. This predates the internet.
Right.
It is a piece of information that is spread over and over like a gene.
It's very interesting how that came about. I mean, I never knew that that's where that word came from. It's very interesting. Now, I have to admit that I have created memes. Not very many.
And they had so many likes on Facebook. It was amazing how viral they went.
Yeah, I think I had 4 likes on one. Actually, I think they take like 25 seconds to create. So they're pretty easy. And that's part of the reason that they can be so dangerous too, is because anybody can create a meme. And that's something to keep in mind when you're looking at them is, I mean, I downloaded a free app onto my iPad and was able to pull, you know, probably copyrighted pictures off the internet and use them for free and, you know, slap whatever I wanted on it and put it out there. So anybody can do that. Now, a little just kind of tidbit for you is I did notice that when I did that, it had a little tag down on the bottom about where it was from. So you can at least try to track a little bit about, hey, where'd this meme come from? And look it up and see, you know, was it made by an app that you can download for free on your iPad? So I would say, you know, take memes with a grain of salt.
Well, it's the same thing, right? It's information that's being presented to you that you have to analyze critically.
Correct.
And even though it's fun and cute and funny and it's got Gene Wilder on it, that doesn't make it necessarily true.
That is correct. Mine never had Gene Wilder, though. No.
What was yours?
Oh, let's see. Oh, I did one with Steve Jobs holding the iPhone, and it said like Steve Jobs' father was a Syrian refugee. Put down your iPhone and think about that for a second.
It's a good one. I like that.
I know it should have gone viral, right?
I would have liked that if I'd seen it.
I'll find it and share it.
Give it another try.
Yeah, give it another shot.
We need to tweet it.
I'm sure that
tweet it.
Yeah, maybe the tens of people that are listening to this right now.
Do we have that many?
All share it. I'm pretty sure with the family and friends that I've threatened that we at least have tens of people listening to this right now. So, welcome to I Can't Believe This.
Yes, we appreciate your patronage.
Yes.
Follow us on Twitter at Podcast Fake News.
And on Facebook.
See Beth's meme.
Yeah. We'll put it up with the episode. Yeah. So the last category I want to talk about is actual news. And this is where we have journalists, like real, actual, true journalists who are hopefully even collecting a paycheck for their efforts and who sometimes make mistakes. And, you know, that's okay because mistakes happen. But there are journalists out there fact-checking, getting sources, maintaining integrity and accountability. And these are the people that we should be getting your news from, not, you know, like your Aunt Marcia, who just downloaded a meme maker and started finding out memes, or like some sociology major and her friend who decided to start a podcast, and they're just putting random information out there for people.
But those people, they're solid.
Yes. Those, I think there's a couple of podcasters that are actually pretty smart.
Aside from us? Or just a couple, like just us?
I think, yeah, just us. No. There's some very good podcasts out there, and I think you can get some good information from them. But again, anybody can start a podcast, referenced by the fact that we did. It's kind of hard, but it's not that hard that like anybody can't do it. And I think, remember we were like researching to make sure that like we wanted to see if anybody else is doing what we're doing. Like, is anybody else doing a fake news podcast? And there is another podcast out there with a very similar sounding name to ours.
Yeah.
And they were literally like, I think doing a podcast about like conspiracy theories or something, but it was like they believe in them.
Yeah, but from like supporting the conspiracy theory perspective, it was kind of interesting.
Yeah. We were like, oh well.
Don't be fooled. That's not us.
Nope, not us. So, do you want to talk about some fake news? You want to go through an actual article?
Yeah, before we do that though, I just want to talk a little bit more about journalists and what they do. And so real journalists, like the kind at the New York Times, the Washington Post, NBC News, CNN, all these places, these are people who have careers, and they are invested in reporting true things. So if they have sources and they double check them, and a lot of times you don't just like, oh well, Bill told me this and so I'm going to stick it in here, right? They have guidelines for what they can print. It's checked by editors. It is from an institution that has so much history and knowledge of how to do this correctly. And when they print something that is incorrect, there are massive consequences, like Dan Rather, right? You remember that?
Brian Williams.
and Brian Williams, that was a little bit different. That was just comments that he made that were exaggerated. But Dan Rather reported something that was flat out wrong, and like there were big consequences for it. And there are when they do that. So to say, I believe some no-name or an anonymous byline on Occupy Democrats more than I trust someone from the New York Times, because that's corporate media.
Right.
That's not a valid way of assessing information.
I agree. I think the processes that are in place for actual journalists that work at newspapers or work for news, on the TV, they have processes in place and they are accountable.
Yeah.
So it is a lot more accountable than somebody who's, like we keep mentioning Occupy Democrats, and it's not that we hate that Occupy Democrats, but they're very, they have a lot of propaganda within their articles. And so that's literally just somebody who started that website, and started putting that out. They're, who knows if they're probably big enough now that they're actually making money. And
I'm sure they're making so much money. Oh my gosh, we're in the wrong business, Beth. Really. My gosh, we need to be in the fake news business, because
we're in the free podcast business.
So much money. Beth and I actually work together at the company that shall not be named.
That's true.
Yeah, we. We're not going to say what we do, but we spend a lot of time in our cars.
Yes,
and we listen to podcasts a lot, and kind of thought that maybe we could do this ourselves. But anyway, that's just a little bit of backstory on us too.
Well, we definitely thought, I definitely hope that it sounds at least half as professional as the podcast that we listen to.
No way.
Hopefully it just doesn't sound terrible.
We're going to
just
have
go
to
for that.
keep these day jobs big time.
I think we're going to have to keep the day jobs. And hopefully if we ever get to a point where we need it, maybe we can get an intern or something from one of your my colleges to help us with like actually recording this professionally, because we're doing the best that we can.
Have we apologized yet?
I don't think we have.
Oh my goodness.
Let's start now.
Yeah.
we would like to officially apologize for
so sorry
for whatever
everything.
It is.
Really everything. Yeah. The past 40 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So and everything that's going to come too.
Prepare
quality.
Yourself.
Yeah.
Just be prepared, people.
Yeah.
I think we're actually going to start out every episode from now on with the apologies, and we'll get that in right at the beginning, and it'll just cover the episode.
Welcome to I Can't Believe It's Not News with Beth and Elizabeth. We're so sorry. So sorry. So sorry.
But thanks for listening.
Keep on listening. Sorry.
Sorry.
So let's talk about some fake news.
Okay, yeah, great. So let's jump on in. So one of the things that we wanted to do in order to just create some continuity is we created a template for when we're going to go through an article or a meme so that we kind of hit the same points every time. And this is definitely going to be evolving, and we'll probably change things as we go for taking out things that don't work or adding in things that we find that would add some value. But as of right now, the template starts with the headline, of course. So this first article that we're going to review is called Breaking: Obama Tax Audit Turns Up Millions in Offshore Accounts Stolen from Taxpayers.
Sounds legit to me.
Totally. Dun, dun, dun. So then it says Obama's healthcare did more than ruin the American healthcare system. Apparently, it also made Obama a millionaire. Throughout Obama's presidency, there was speculation on how they could afford to go on vacations every other week and wear high-end designer clothing. After all, isn't the president's salary $400,000 a year and not $4 million a year? Well, it turns out that Obama's salary might have been closer to the $4 million a year or higher mark thanks to the American taxpayers.
Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, presidential vacations. We were talking about this a little bit I did some research on it because I thought this was kind of interesting since this came up. And it turns out on presidential vacations, which he did not take that many of, it's just like a fact. The thing that the taxpayers pay for is the transportation and all of the support that goes on around that. So the lodging and the food and the incidentals, that's all paid for by the president and his family. So, for example, when DJT goes down to Mar-a-Lago, I don't really think you'd consider that a vacation, but I mean, he's working. Right. But when he goes, the taxpayers are paying for Air Force One and all of the Secret Service, the support staff. But he's going to a property that he owns, and so he's not actually paying anything out of his pocket for staying in Mar-a-Lago. So it's just kind of interesting to sort of look at those together.
Yeah, definitely. And I agree, I don't think our presidents get vacations like we get vacations.
No, I'm sorry, I'm turning my phone off.
Yeah, exactly. It's a salaried position. There's no overtime there. And when they go on vacation, they get bugged. It's not like the vice president takes over and runs the country while they're gone. So definitely, vacation for a president's a little bit of a misnomer. But I did read one time that I think it said that anytime they're not at the White House or Camp David, it's considered vacation if they're not off the White House for, if they're not traveling overseas for presidential duties, then it's considered vacation time. But again, it's not vacation like you and I think of vacation. So
anyway, that's not even the best part of this article.
No, this article gets
sidetracked because this is good stuff. Yeah, that's boring. Let's go.
So the next paragraph is several onshore accounts were found throughout the Cayman Islands, Ireland, and Caledonia under the name of Barry Soetoro, LLC, totaling $411 million. This Barry Soetoro guy has been receiving royalty checks from the U.S. Treasury for his assistance in naming Obamacare. These royalties ended when Obamacare was officially named the Affordable Act. That is my favorite line in this article.
Just the Affordable Act, huh?
It calls it the Affordable Act, not even the Affordable Care Act, or as it was actually named in the beginning, the Patient Privacy and Affordable Care Act. And Obamacare was never renamed Obamacare. That was a nickname that was given to it. And honestly, quite rudely, So anyway, we're digressing a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about, I want to ask you this, Elizabeth. Is Ireland a tax haven?
Actually, a bit. Yeah, that was one of the things that I read this that I thought, how is this? Who does that? Who wants to, find a place to stash their money and they think Ireland? That's where I'm going to go. I mean, I think
that's obvious.
Well, yeah, because it's where the leprechauns put their money.
Yes, that's where all the gold is. That's completely obvious.
Well, and then Caledonia.
What is Caledonia? Because that sounds like a pastry.
Well, it is a very, very old name for Scotland. It's the name that the Romans used for it.
Really?
Yeah. So that's a really strange reference. And so I Googled it, and I think that that's the primary use of that word. But there are other Caledonias, okay? And they're in Canada, in Kentucky, Michigan. There's a ghost town named Caledonia in Indiana. So
that's definitely where.
That's probably
that's the one.
Exactly.
The ghost town.
Yeah. So I don't know what they're talking about.
Well, let's go back to our template for just a moment here, because there's a couple things that we checked on this article, and one of them was the date. So there is no visible date listed on this article. The second thing I checked was for an author, and there was no author listed. So,
no journalist who's staking their career on the truthfulness of these claims?
Not here. Nope. And then we looked at who it was published by. It was published by U.S. Journal Review, which I checked them through Wikipedia's fake news website tracker, as well as the fake news checker website. And although I didn't see it listed on there, I think it's probably just a newer fake website. In my research for this podcast, I found that fake news websites typically change pretty quickly. They'll, once they get tagged by like Google or Facebook as being a fake site, they'll just change their name so that they can start all over. So fun stuff. Mm-hmm. So another thing that we check is Snopes, which until this podcast, I always thought was called Snoops.com. and apparently that was fake. So it's actually called Snopes. And I honestly, I'm struggling with it a little bit. So you can make fun of me when I do it, but I might slip up and call it Snoops.
How did you figure that out? How did you figure out that you were wrong?
I think I just heard enough people say it that I was like, am I wrong? Or are they wrong? And then I looked at it and I was like, oh, there's only one O. It's Snopes, not Snoops.
Yeah.
But, they have that magnifying glass, and I thought it was like...
they were like... I'm looking into the urban legend or the folklore, but no. Just wrong.
I was just wrong. Which is just misinformation, not disinformation. So anyway, I checked on Snopes, which is a great website, and basically found out that this article has been around the block a time or two. So as they tend to do in fake news, they'll recycle things and just change the headline or, reinvent it. And this one on Snopes is for a royalty payment. Reports that President Obama made millions off of royalties from trademarking the word Obamacare are fake news. So definitely been verified by Snopes as a fake news.
I want to talk real quick about the logistics of how he got paid every time someone used the word Obamacare. Like, how did that happen?
You don't remember that little wooden box popping up? Every time you said Obamacare and you had to put a nickel in it before it would go away.
Oh, that was what that was about.
Yeah. Remember back in like 2011 when John Kane was rich before the 2012 election because he had to put like so many nickels.
He was plagued by that thing.
Yeah, totally.
Even Sarah Palin, it followed around everywhere.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, they totally have one up there in Alaska for her.
Then it stopped, and then it just stopped, and it must have been when the name was changed.
That must be why she doesn't work for Fox News anymore, is because they can't afford it.
At Fox News, yeah.
Okay, we're kidding about the box. It's not true. That didn't happen.
It's just absurd. It's just so funny.
It's crazy. It's just crazy.
Well, like you were saying, this is not obviously what the name of the bill was. It was something, that Republicans came up with. And didn't we figure out that Mitt Romney was the first person to use that word sort of in that contest in kind of a derisive way?
Yeah, so we did a little research on who coined Obamacare, and we found a great article by The Atlantic. And let me pull it up here. So this was back in October 26th of 2011, this came out. So this has been around for a while. And it talks about how the name Obamacare came about. And basically, Mitt Romney was one of the first person that really said, hey, here's what it said. The many would-to-be candidates for president in 2008 are falling over themselves, offering their own proposals. We will soon see a Giuliani care and Obamacare to go along with McCain care, Edwards care, and a totally revamped and remodeled Hillary care from the 1990s.
I just figured it out, Beth.
What?
Mittens was getting a cut.
That makes so much sense now. Because he had Romney care first.
Uh-huh.
So he was probably already getting a royalty and was like, hey, if you're going to do Obamacare, I want my cut.
Yeah, Mittens is the smart money guy, right?
Yes, he is.
Yeah, I'm trying to start a meme that his name is Mittens. And you just call him Mitt for short.
He is kind of kitty-like. He's like, meow. He's always trying to get in the door. Oh, poor Mitt Romney. Well, I had also remembered that I had remembered Obama saying, like, you can call it Obamacare. I don't mind. And because basically,
of course he didn't mind. He was getting paid.
Yeah, right. I never made
Why would he mind that?
Yeah, he's totally getting paid.
Good. You should continue to do it repeatedly.
Yeah, right.
Add it to the Pledge of Allegiance.
Well, I remembered, if you think back, like when this all was happening, like Democrats, liberals, they were really upset by the term Obamacare because it was derisive and it was rude. And Obama came out and said, you know what, go ahead and call it Obamacare. I don't mind. I do care. And it's fine. And then it was much more acceptable and people started calling it Obamacare for real. But I found this article back from February 17th of 2014, and it has a quote in it. It's basically an article about Obama saying you can call it Obamacare. And his quote is, I like it. I don't mind. The president told former NBA star Charles Barkley in an interview that aired Sunday about the term Obamacare. And I'll tell you, 5 years from now, when everybody's saying, man, I'm sure glad we got health care, there's going to be a whole bunch of people who don't call it Obamacare anymore because they don't want me to get the credit. So I think, he had recognized that there was a wound there and he wanted to heal it. And so he kind of came out and said, it's okay, called Obamacare, and healed that wound. So the other thing that we found was actually in the original fake article, in the comments, somebody had put a link to an article in the Inquisitor, which is a real news site. And it's called Hoax. Obama Tax Audit Did Not Reveal $411 million in Stolen Taxpayer Money. Debunked. And this was published on March 12th, 2017. And it's by Paula Mooney, who's an actual journalist. And it basically just verifies that, this story isn't true.
Yeah, so I'm looking at this article and it's quoting the fake one. This is one of my favorites. Few people know it, but when the Liberal Congress of 2010 passed the Obamacare bill without reading it, a percentage of the proceeds is automatically routed to the bill's author. So they're actually suggesting that the, air quotes here, Liberal Congress, which included Republicans, okay,
right,
but the Congress members, whatever their party, their multitude of staffers, their lawyers, and everyone else who was involved in this incredibly contentious and controversial bill, they didn't bother to read it.
Well, Elizabeth, reading is hard.
Well, yeah. And that's why people read the headlines on these fake stories, share away, and don't even bother checking out if it says garbage like this.
That's true. That's true. Actually, you just made me think of a couple things. I have two questions here. Number one is for all those nickels that I put into that wooden box.
That was a lot.
Do I get to write that off on my taxes? Is that a deduction?
No, 'cause that's not a tax. That's a royalty payment.
All right.
Sorry. All right. Carry around all those nickels all the time.
It was hard.
He's having to go to the bank and get more nickels.
My second, it's not really a question. I have a thought. I didn't even think about this until we were talking about it. But, a lot of fake news is in basically response to something. It's designed to make you turn your head away from the real issue. And what is this talking about? It's talking about a tax audit. And whose tax returns are we super concerned about right now?
Yours.
Yeah. Well, actually I am. It's getting close. No, but I mean, everybody's super focused on, is DJT going to release his taxes? Yeah. And here's an article so that, if you love DJT and you hate Obama, you can say, look, Obama's the bad one and DJT is not. And, Obama's the one that is stealing millions from taxpayers. So,
that's about for good observation. Yeah.
Anyway, so our official label for this one is fake. And that's with a capital F, A, K, and E. This is like fake as fake.
Debunked.
Definitely. So we wanted to also go to the other side of the aisle and review a meme that is actually from a liberal website called Occupy Democrats that we've kind of been harping on a little bit today, which wasn't on purpose. It just happened. So this meme, I'm pulling it up here and it's being really slow, has a picture on it of two guys. There is one on the left that's a old, middle-aged white guy. He's bald. And underneath it says, Thursday, Mark Barnett was arrested for plotting to plant 10 bombs in Target stores up and down the East Coast. And on the right, it's another white guy. He's a little bit younger. He's got some brown hair. And it says, on Wednesday, white supremacist Benjamin McDowell was arrested for plotting against a mass shooting against blacks and Jews. And then underneath that, it says, not Muslims, period. Not refugees, period. Not immigrants, period. Not black or brown, period. White Americans, period. Trump hasn't mentioned, underlined, either of the men. America, this is what hypocrisy looks like. So I, first of all, wanted to make sure that the news that was quoted there was actually true. So I looked up a couple of things about the men. So the first guy, Mark Barnett, there's an article
plan.
This is
solid.
This article is called "Man's Plan to Bomb Target Stores to Buy Cheap Stock Totally Backfires."
Yeah, I know. I remember it when it happened.
Do you?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this is hilarious. He tried to. He had a plan to bomb a bunch of Target stores in order to make their stock go down so that then he could load up on it and make a hefty profit when it eventually recovered. So he paid somebody $10,000 to do this for him because he didn't want to do it. And that person went to the police. And so he was arrested and is in custody waiting trial at the time that I looked this up. So, yeah, and then the other guy, Benjamin McDowell, let me pull up his article. So, FBI white supremacists talked of Dylan Roof type attack. So, basically, this guy tried to buy a gun or he did actually buy a gun from an undercover FBI agent.
They have the best guns and the best prices, too.
Totally.
They have these awesome coupons.
I think there's an Easter discount coming up. But the agent just kind of let him talk, and he told the agent that he'd planned an attack in the spirit of Dylan Roof. So, again, a real news story, and I just want to take a moment and say thank you, to the FBI agents and the police that stopped both of these guys from doing anything. I think that's why we didn't hear about it in the news.
Mm-hmm. And why DJT didn't comment on it. No
exactly.
One died. Nothing to say.
Yeah, if they had actually gone through with their plans or something had actually happened, maybe, then that would have been mentioned. But I think stuff like this probably happens every day and a lot more than we hear about across the U.S. and the world, where, things are stopped before they happen. And that's what happened here. So at the end of the day, yes, this meme has real news in it, but it's spin because they've presented it in a way that it goes to their bias.
Yeah.
So, and actually when I was researching this, I found out this was actually based on an article that Sean King had written for the it's the NY Daily News. And the article is actually a little bit better than the meme itself. It just kind of talks about how hey, if this had happened and it had been somebody who wasn't white that had done it, I think we would have heard about it. And
the important part of that is if this had happened.
Right.
If these things didn't happen.
Right. But you can see how the meme kind of just took the very biased points of the article and boiled it down into that picture paints 1,000 words, where the article has a little bit more meat to it. And you can definitely...
Oh, I think I see what he was saying. He's saying that just even what did actually happen, if the target guy had been a person of color who was plotting this attack, but we did hear about it. But he's saying that DJT would have been screaming about it.
Right. We would have heard more about it, and possibly from DJT, and that it, even could have been used to justify, more executive orders, that kind of thing,
Hypotheticals.
Hypotheticals. And again, even that article, definitely some spin to it, but the meme just kind of takes it a little bit further. And I think just, boils it down, and it's this snapshot that people can see and just get really angry over something that maybe they don't have all the facts on unless they take the time to research it, which how many memes do you see a day and how many do you research?
Yeah. And even research, you don't even have to go to that level. It just needs to be thought about a little bit, So
that's true. So we're definitely this one we're labeling as spin.
Yeah.
And that's our show for today.
Yeah, it sure is. So we just invite you to follow us on Twitter at Podcast Fake News. Subscribe to us on iTunes. Leave us a 5-star rating. If you have critique, if you got something to say,
Yeah, we're new at this.
Yeah, we're new. So, kind words are best. We're open to critique. Email us at a podcastfakenews@gmail.com. Just don't leave the critique on iTunes. Not right now. Yeah. Not yet.
Give us the benefit of the doubt, please.
And we hope you enjoyed our show. And I hope
we'll be back in 2 weeks.
Yeah,
we'll be back in 2 weeks.
Yes, ma'am. It's true. We'll be back in 2 weeks.
We'll do more if we can, but we're going to commit to doing an episode every 2 weeks. So look for us then. And let's see here. Anything else we wanted to say? I don't think so. Except for
spread jam.
Not lies.